This never happens on Australia's Got Talent, does it, Martin?
They usually turn my mic off pretty fast. Two. How about now? Cool. Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. How many of you have actually been to Fishburners before? Show of hands. Awesome. How long ago? How many people have been here in the last 6 months? Hands up. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. How many people here have a startup right now? Right? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. How many have less than 10 people in their startup? That's almost. How many have less than 5 people in their startup? Okay, cool. So I guess reaching out to the media, trying to get attention, all of that kind of stuff, writing those press releases is probably the least of your worries. If you have a team of less than 5, a team of less than 10, I think it's one of those pretty time-consuming processes to actually get the attention. So, I'm excited about today's. Man just keeps telling me to push this down. I'm really excited about today. So. A bit about my background. I'm an entrepreneur myself. My last startup, I was really lucky. Actually, something that really helped that get to the next stage was a piece of media attention. So, there was basically a competitor that was working in the space. We were working in that space as well. We were like, what do we do? How do we actually overcome this? Basically, we ended up getting a piece of media that went national and then got a little bit more traction. Mostly due to hate, but anyway, it got a little bit more traction and got people talking. And on the back of that, we ended up raising quite a lot of money and we ended up acquiring quite a few customers from that. So I think it's absolutely something that can help you get to the next stage of your startup. But I think more importantly is just, for you to actually get what you're doing out there is really important as well. So I'm really lucky. Had pieces in, I think, all of the places that you'll hear about today. The journalists are amazing. Super excited. So I'd like to bring on stage Marie Dowling, who is going to be the MC for today. 2-time tech PR founder, PR expert. Everything that she has to say about PR and tech PR particularly, make sure that you take that in, acknowledge that, and go ahead and use those frameworks and make sure that you can be the best when it comes to putting yourself out there. So a little on Fishburners. For those that have seen the space, you're in our co-working space. We've helped over 45,000 entrepreneurs build their products and release those products. We have our physical co-working space, and we also have a digital product as well, where you can actually connect with a range of different startups in the ecosystem, but as well as investors, advisors, mentors, and people around. So we really do see Fishburners as the glue to the startup ecosystem, and particularly the early stage ecosystem. So it's great to have you all here. Welcome up on stage, and good luck to everybody. Good luck. I hope you all brought your press releases. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you guys are busy. I know too well you guys are busy. But most founders forget to tell their stories to the world. So you spend your time building, and then you forget to tell the world about why you're building and what you can change in the world with your building. And media relation can really help you do that. So the analogy I love to take is, there's 2 types of dates in the world. I don't know who's been on a date recently. It's been a while for me, but because I'm married, not because my lifestyle. But basically, the first type of date, you go and the guy or the girl spend an hour talking about themselves, how amazing they are, everything they're doing, and why really you should give them a chance. And then there's the other types of dates where before you go, somebody else, somebody that you trust, tells you all about that person and how amazing they are and everything they're building and why you should give them a chance. And PR is that for marketing. When you get an article in the media, you get somebody their readers trust to write your startup, what you're trying to achieve, often about your mission. It's less about what you do, but what you're trying to achieve in the final end results, and that's invaluable. Yeah, it's light. And so PR helps you be the startups customers want to buy from, and investors want to buy in. But the issue that Tech so beautifully said when she...
I can't believe that you're calling me out.
I am. There's no such thing as background information when you talk to journalists. No, I'm kidding.
I'll see how many it is now.
So the main issue...
3,000 folks, let's go.
Here we go. So how do you make sure that you stand out in those 43,000 emails? And that's what we're going to ask the panel today. Because 3 in 4 of the pitches that journalists receive is irrelevant. Steph told me some horror stories. And since we launched a newsletter recently, we launched a newsletter called The Club for Women in Tech. And we've had some men pitch their startups as a potential interview for the club. So now I've experiences from both sides of the fence. And it's a nightmare to receive unwanted emails. Also, just a quick thing, public relation does not stand for press release, so please stop just sending press release to journalists. It's not the best way to get in the media. A few rules before we hear from the panel on do's and don'ts of PR. First rule of PR, do not be a jerk. That's literally the main rule to remember. If you're nice, you're going to get nicer coverage. And in terms of do, we've got a few rules that the panel will probably go through in a minute. So let's hear from them how you can cut through the noise and earn the attention you need to disrupt the word. Thank you.
That was actually excellent. That's all you need to know. So we can,
Job done, let's go. Hello? Is this working? Hello? Hello?
there you go. You're on.
Yes? Sorry. Hi, thank you so much, Marie, for that intro. My name is Steph Palmer-Derrien, and as Marie introed me, I am a sort of former, sort of still startup and tech journalist. I was previously startup and tech editor at Smart Company, which Tegan's taken up and like, I was going to say filled my shoes, but like absolutely overspilled my shoes. Just doing way better than I ever did. And now I'm a freelance writer, content person, and I also run a newsletter called The Club, which is telling the stories of women in tech and entrepreneurship and business. We want to hear from women with amazing stories about women, not from men. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to be asking some questions. We're going to have a little chat, keep it pretty casual, and then we're going to leave some time for audience questions at the end. First, I'll introduce our esteemed panel. We have Elle, who is the founder of Hey Good News. Welcome. She's a very experienced PR and is going to give us some insight from that side of the fence. We have Simon Thompson, who I'm sure many of you know is editor of Startup Daily. Again, very experienced voice. Tegan Jones, now Startup and Tech senior reporter or editor? Senior reporter?
Editing, it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's the dream. At Smart Company. I'm sure you're all familiar with her work as well. And obviously we have Marie at the end, who is the founder of Newsary and also co-founder of The Club with me. It was all her idea. So we've got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to get stuck right into it. And I'm going to come to Tegan first.
I'm so sorry.
Can you talk me through the day-to-day of being a startup and tech journalist? Like, what does your what does the day look like? How and when do you decide what goes in the newsletter and what you're going to cover that day?
Yeah, so I think that the one word that I would use to describe my role is hectic. I was brought on to Smart Company to be a technology journalist. My background is in consumer technology and video games. I've been doing that for about 10 years. But, being a smaller team and also because tech is everything, it does mean that expanded out into startups as well. So I have a lot of stories on my plate at any given time. When it comes to choosing what to write about each day, usually we'll go into our 8:20 a.m. Morning with pitches. For me, that will be technology based, as long as it's actually based in Australia. So we're very focused on Australia at Smart Company, as well as if there's any startup news as well. So whether that has come to me from a tip or from a press release or whispers in the network. And then it's really just deciding what is most relevant for our audience. So for example, we cover a lot of raises because that's very exciting because we like to be aspirational with Smart Company, as well as me firing pot shots a lot of the time if you're familiar with my work. So so it really just depends on what's relevant for the audience and what's going on that day, and I guess the broader context of what's going on in the tech and startup ecosystems at the time.
And Simon, what about you? Like, how do you decide what to cover on a day-to-day basis, and how is your day structured?
My day's structured by doing what most people do, and that's waking up and looking at my phone. Like this morning, there was a release that came in at 5 a.m. Samsara Eco, you probably had the same one. And my first thought was, fuck, should I get out of bed and do this right now? And then my second thought was, yeah, probably. And so that story was up, I think, by about 6:30 this morning. That's not a normal day, but, you know, I've got a year 12 daughter who's off to school at very pre-dawn at the moment.
What's a normal day?
Yeah, the normal day is...
does it exist really?
Yeah, every day. I mean, I think that's the exciting part about what we do. You never know what's going to land. None of us knew that, you know, Main Sequence was going to be throwing more money at this plastics, enzyme-eating, recycling business. And you kind of go, wow. Every day is different, and then I hear from a mix of different people. I've heard from a couple of small founders. I've had a few other different conversations. People have sort of contacted me on LinkedIn, some on email. A guy who runs a VC over in New Zealand who I haven't spoken to for about a year and a half sort of got in touch, wanting to sort of, who I had previously on the show I had on AusBiz, sort of saying, hey, haven't spoken for a while. There are all of those moments. Another thing I'm working on for an event that's coming up in a couple of months. So it's all different. In terms of deciding the stories, I think in the back of your head all the time you have a mix. Like for me, if my front page is all middle-aged white blokes, I've stuffed up, you know. It has to be some variation in the storytelling because I want to tell stories that are big and stories that are small. And there are times when I actually think I should rebrand the site to Startup Kindy because I do a lot of very early stage companies. When Mark was asking before how many of you are, you know, less than 5 people, how many of you are one person but doing 5 jobs? I reckon it's probably, yeah, exactly. That's the people I think of because I joke, you know, that I put the I in team. Startup Daily is just one person. And with a fancy title of editor. So all the mistakes are mine. But the thing about that is it gives me enormous privilege to go wherever I want. And if I get distracted and head off in this direction, that's fine. But the important thing for me is that I cover a lot of ground every day. So sometimes I get external voices in to help, and that's really important. And then, of course, I tell the stories of those early races, or you've just turned up for the first time, or you've joined an accelerator. And those are small stories that are really incremental. But the nice part about that is, and I don't think I've ever forgotten the excitement of someone getting in the media for the first time, being able to show, you know, parents or friends, partners, whatever, that, you know, you exist in terms of what you're doing from a work perspective. And that is a really powerful and important moment. And I try to keep that in the back of my head. I can do Canvas stories all day because they are absolutely catnip for our audience. People love reading them, but I don't think the world needs more Canvas stories at this point in time. Yes, there are lessons that they can teach us that we can all take on board as founders and business people, but it's not where we want to be. So telling the story of the next potential Canva is the exciting part.
And I feel like that's sort of a different, like you're kind of illustrating the differences in sort of the media ecosystem here. Like a publication like the AFR probably wouldn't go for those like very, very early stage stories. Like what, I guess, where do you feel like, for both of you, where do you feel like you sit in kind of the ecosystem and in terms of like at what point a startup can reach out to you?
Yeah, I am completely on board with what Simon said. It's why we're mates as well as competitors all the time, because I think we'd both agree, we both cover that, what we call the smaller end of town. We certainly talk about that in our editorial meetings versus the larger end of town, so what the AFR would cover. So what we usually find is that we'll be covering businesses like that really early stage, maybe pre-seed. It's certainly what I've been doing in Neural Notes, my weekly AI column, like really getting these stories out about these startups that may have only launched 5 months ago. And then with those early stage startups, we'll then see them being reported on in the Australian or the AFR or something in a couple of years' time. But it's kind of nice that we saw that vision first, and that's very exciting for me. And you can't be salty about it when then down the line they'll start getting the exclusives, because obviously they have to go for that larger audience reach. But
I still get salty about it.
no, I understand it from especially if they've got PR or something at that stage and that's what they're being advised to do. So I mean, I try not to take that personally, but I think that that's the beautiful thing about having the nimbleness that we do, like at our 2 publications, is that we can chase those stories that are so much more interesting as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, amazing. And I've just got one more question for the journos, and then I'm going to bring in some of our PR expertise. But I often say to startups that you can have the best press release, the best media training and all of that, but if you don't know what your story is, you're not going to get anywhere. So for you guys, what is a story for Smart Company and what is a story for Startup Daily? What do you want to hear from people? What will cut through those 43,000 emails?
It can work on a number of levels, but the first part is what's your story, and don't forget, I think in some ways, that what you're pitching to investors, if you are looking for that sort of funding, is the same thing that you want to kind of pitch to the media. The story's not that different, except we're not going to give you money, but we are going to give you something that can be quite valuable, as Martin talked about earlier. But that story, I think the really important part is that what you're selling most of the time is feeling and emotion, and you're taking people on an adventure. And too often founders get caught up in the product and the engineering and all the other bits and pieces, which is not the sexy part. It's kind of like if I said I'm going to give you a big juicy steak, where sort of it's full of flavour and everything's coming out. That's very different to me sort of saying, yeah, but I've been feeding the cow grain and it's had grass and, and all the other bits and pieces. That's not the story. There are some nerdy people who go down that path, but that goes back to the sizzle and not the steak. Well, but they're also specialist publications, so that's the other thing about the media landscape. You've got 2 people who are on the Venn diagram of startup coverage, have a fair bit of overlap. But, there will be sort of something like Engineers Weekly that will be fascinated in the details of your build. And there will be another one over here that's dealing in the HR side, and another one that's sort of in deep tech. There are all these different options, and then the AFR when you sort of, suddenly have your first $100 million. So there are all of these different niches that it operates in. So again, like pitching to whomever, it's understanding the different audiences and taking the time to understand a little bit of that. And to do that requires some due diligence on your part in understanding the audience. The thing that always astonishes me is the number of pitches I get, especially from PRs, that have nothing to do with what I do for a living. So, one of my favourites is a chicken franchise in Dubbo that's been around for 30 years. Would you like to write about it for Startup Daily? No, I wouldn't. I'm sure it's a great chicken franchise and I can't wait to try it the next time I'm in Dubbo, but it's not a Startup Daily story.
The one piece of advice that's a little more generalised, because I agree with you, definitely don't discount trade publications. But the one thing I always say that sounds harsh is that one of the things as founders, and I'm one myself, is that you're so close to your product or your service, whatever it is, you know why it matters. You know why you love it. You've put your blood, sweat and tears into it. But when it comes to trying to get that story out into the media, you need to ask yourself the who cares. And it's a hard question. Is to any random person who might be a reader or on the street, what is it about your journey, your story, your product, whatever it is, that people should give a shit about? Find that, and you're halfway there. That's really important.
Really, really good advice.
The question I always put when I send a certain Q&A to some early stage founders to make it easy for them, it's a simple question. Why is this important? Tell me why it matters.
I'm actually going to quickly, one of the best advice I ever received was from a former journalist, Steph, when she was like, it's not just about why it matters, but why should people care today? And you can build the best thing in the world and have, heaps of things happening, but what's the news element to it? What should people read about it today? And a lot of founders and PR forget about that often.
Yeah, I think that's kind of about the urgency as well. Like, there are publications and there are journalists who will write incredible like profile stories that are these sort of like I'm one of them myself, like founder stories, like how did this idea come to pass? Like, where did it come from? What's your story? But like when you're pitching a newsroom, it's like, well, I can write that next week or I can write that next month, and it's so easy to get forgotten. Whereas if there's like this is happening now and today, that's your hook, then you can like add all that like beautiful storytelling afterwards. So in terms of from a PR perspective, how do you approach startup media? And is it any different to how you approach other types of media? Like, what do you advise people?
Yeah, so startup media relations is really, really different to to PR for a larger company, say, you know, your Telstras or your Woolies or anything like that. It requires very much an education piece, I find. So I very much, my job is taking founders on a journey of, you know, what is important about your experience. What are people going to care about? How you know, started the company, you know, what's the important parts of the company? Why is it different? Identifying them. So I often do a messaging workshop with founders very early on, with them engaging me. Identifying them, coming up with a kind of a media plan, essentially, identifying what their audience is. Is it going to be trade, press, or is the announcement going to be big enough for a national? And then doing media training with them, prepping them. I don't ever put my kind of my clients in front of nationals without them doing a training. Because it's not a good idea. I've seen things go wrong.
See, I love it because I'm like, ooh, these founders are going to say things.
I know, that's it. I know, I think founders, they're so excited about their product, and that's awesome. But then at the same time, you are going to, the piece will, potentially be in a national story. So I always just provide some tips, advice before doing that, and then also identifying what are the stories that are going to be newsworthy. That's a massive one, because the thing is, you don't want to be sending stuff out to these guys that's just not relevant or big enough for them. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of their time. So what I advise very much, I'm an advisor and say, this story is going to work. This is where I suggest you pitch it to. And this is the journalist that would be interested in it. So I think very much my role is an education one. And then also obviously doing the execution. So, helping founders or smaller startups with creating that pitch that is going to work, and that will cut through that 40,000 emails that Tegan has every day. It's all about crafting. What is that pitch? What's that media angle that's going to kind of work? And then, getting that really lovely piece. And that's what I love about working with startups is that first media article. It's amazing. And people are always blown away. They're like, there are people that care about my company. And that's great. And I love that. And then when they get their first AFR piece, I had that a couple of weeks back, they framed it and it's now in the office. So, and it's just those moments which I think is, why I do my job. I've kept all my national stories I've ever done for companies. They're in a nice folder in my cupboard. So that's kind of my highlights to my job, really. So, yeah.
No, that's definitely almost why I got in PR. I went to PR from public affairs, which we see the media a bit different because we see the media as a very powerful tool for change. You got access to a mass of people that you can, I wouldn't say influence, but you can help show them the right information so they can take informed decision or understand your industry in the ways that you're trying to change or disrupt. So I think for me, PR is a way of getting people to tell their stories with the media. And we had a piece recently on this Bondi, following the Bondi Junction tragedy, trying to raise funds for the first respondents. And so it's really a way of achieving change in a way that no other marketing tools can do it. And our role as Newsary is to do basically what Ellie is doing, but on a more mass scale, making it affordable for early stage founders, because we believe earned media should be able to cater to the stories that needs to be told, and not just the people who can afford a PR agency. So if you can afford a PR agency, do. If you can't, there's our startup for that.
One of the things I probably should address, and you just reminded me of that, is I'm incredibly aware of the power and responsibility that comes with having a platform like Startup Daily, where I send out an EDM a few times a week to more than 10,000 people. There's 1.5 million people reading it every year, which for a small specialist publication is pretty extraordinary. And I know my mix is a group of founders and people working in startups, and then there's a really strong government component too. So I know that they're looking to see what's going on in the sector. Anyone from New South Wales government, I know that Investment New South Wales is keen, but it'd be great if some of the ministers were looking too.
If anyone in the room's from Investment New South Wales, don't read my website today.
We love Investment New South Wales, but you may have seen I have some views on the government and its ministers at the moment. But in that sense, I think the do good and having heart thing is a really important part. So I will go off on tangents around, doing good and being good, because I think culture, which is something that we talk about all the time in startups, is really important to be seen and to express as well. So those things are good. So, if you're doing something that is a little bit off to the side as part of who you are, that can matter as a story as well. Things that you care about and you're passionate about, and I know the word passion is thrown around all the time, but there are other ways to tell your story that can be really good, just beyond I'm building this and I've got VC funding and I'm one day going to be incredibly rich and successful and have a great exit and all the LPs will be cheering at whatever VC fund. That's a story arc we all know very well. There are other stories to tell that can get a journalist's curiosity, and that's the fun part.
Thank you. I think there's a really interesting point in there, what you're saying as well, Simon, around your story doesn't always have to be a story. If you're someone who has strong opinions about something and is you have values and you see something you don't agree with, you can go out and be like, hey, Simon, I'm really annoyed about this thing that's going on. I'm here to talk about it. And that, as a journalist, is a really valuable resource, just knowing that there's somebody out there who is willing and able and opinionated about a thing. So when you're writing about the thing, you know who to go to and they'll answer the phone and say something that's worth saying.
That's a really great point. I think that's a really good lesson for if you're a founder or working a startup and you're wanting to get your name out there a little bit more and you don't necessarily have a story, is keep your eye on the news. Is there a way you can almost news hack a little bit? So if you have an opinion, if you're an expert on that area, whatever it happens to be that's in the news that day, calling up either myself or Simon or someone else, we're always looking for experts. And so that's a way to get a really easy mention.
Yeah.
I was just to say an example. So the other day I was watching what was happening in the AFR Entrepreneur Summit, and there was a founder up there talking about it's war and you've got to get a knife and you've got to do this and that. And I'm going, fuck off. Because it's not war, I have family who have a very proud history in the military. I wasn't ballsy enough to do that, and I'm happy with my path, but I have enormous respect for people who've served this country. And as metaphors go, it's not a good one, and it's a terrible one to be using in this current circumstances we find ourselves. So I kind of went off a little bit about that on LinkedIn, sort of pointing out that paper cuts are not the same as someone shooting at you. And then someone got in touch, and I've got a piece going up this afternoon talking about language in startups and how you shouldn't use that, but the other triggers. So again, think about your audience and the way you talk to them, and yes, I'm a little bit sweary. I try not to do that on page, but it's the words around trauma and other bits and pieces that can be really triggering for readers. We try to grab metaphors to explain complex ideas on occasion, but be careful about the language that you use in the process. So that's the story that someone has done for me that's going up this afternoon, so have a read of that.
That's an excellent example of that.
Actually,
Keep going.
Keep going.
I reckon it's a debate we need to have.
can I quickly just say there was also a similar instance that I had a year or so ago where Australia Post was doing some things that people weren't happy with, and a founder had gone off about it on LinkedIn, and it prompted me to get in touch because they're an expert in this space. They gave some very strong opinions that are very spicy, so of course I'm going to report on it, and it was great, and they're a fantastic founder. And then I was scrolling on TikTok maybe a few days later, and she's also very prolific on there and talks a lot about like how to get your products viral and things like that. And she's like, here's how I news hacked the media, and there's like my article. I'm like, she got me good. But like everybody wins there, right? Like I got a fantastic article, and she can go out there going, look how I got in the media. I'm like, fair play, honestly.
And the story gets eyeballs. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The story is shared.
Yeah.
Everyone wins.
Talking about LinkedIn, there's somebody on the front seat here, the hype man of the ecosystem, Dicky Kerr, and so he reports after every festival that we have in the startup ecosystem, and both your last two articles. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So Dicky is a hype man of the ecosystem. Use LinkedIn as a platform to talk about the amazing startups events that we have every year, and then both those articles made it to Smart Company, I think, after being published on LinkedIn. So don't underestimate the idea of having opinions that you can back with your expertise, and also have the courage to back them in the media. Don't try and retract if you get picked up on.
Every time I saw it, I thought, damn, I wish I'd thought of that. So if any of you want to out Dicky, go for it. And I'll publish it on Startup Daily.
I'll take a payment, son.
Out Dicky is like the quote of the day, I think.
I would also add to that if you are a person with opinions and you know your expertise and you really know your stuff, then like just getting on like these guys' lists. Like if you're writing a story about whatever trending topic and you know that this person is going to answer the phone and say something good, then like they're going to call you. Like maybe not every time, because we do need, diversity, but yeah, if you're a person who will like, I've had a founder once who I just used to call all the time for stuff. She once answered and was like, I'm just eating a burger. And I was like, do you want me to call you back? And she was like, no, I'm good. Like, just like chatting to me while she's eating her burger. And I was like, this is the contact. These are the contacts that I want. So if you want to be a good media contact, answer your phone, say great stuff, know your shit.
Say cooked stuff if you like. Say weird stuff.
Sorry, can you give advice on that? Because it's kind of counter. You're seeing one person say, have a crack, and one person saying, like, video training.
This is
different
the
sides.
different side of the coin. And this is the, I think when you're a startup, you're not listed. There is a level of, you can say a bit more than maybe a spokesperson from a listed company. And the point is that I think the journalists here are making is unless you say something that's interesting, it won't get published. And I think that's the point. You can play the safe game, and there might be PR agencies that might take more of a safe route, and their advice to spokespeople would be, say, don't answer the question if they ask a question on this topic. Stay away from it. I maybe take more of a relaxed view, just because that I think your story's not going to get published unless you actually say something that's good. So whenever I do media training, we identify what are the definite topics that you can't speak on. I had a client launch an office in China a few months back, and we had to navigate that entire, narrative. They were having an interview with the AFR. So we literally ran a session on, how are we going to answer these questions? So I think that's why I do advise startups do, speak to PR professionals before, sending out a pitch, or just to get their advice on, what they're going to say. But, look, you can reach out directly yourself to journalists. Like, it doesn't have to go through a PR person. I think that's another thing to say.
I'm going to explain it like this. Bondi Lifeguard Please swim between the flags. Us? Oh, look, someone caught in the rip. Will they drown? Stay tuned. We'll have updates in just a minute.
I will say though, like you don't have to just be saying cooked stuff for us to be interested. Also, informed, also good. If you're an expert in an area, but yeah, I would say that's going to be the difference, right? But I also think I don't want to just speak for Simon here, but I think that there's been plenty of times certainly that I've spoken to founders who have been very, very candid, overly candid about certain things when they've been very early stage, and I've known that they probably shouldn't have said something, so I will give them, I don't want to be a jerk, so I'll give them an opportunity to walk that back, especially if I know that it might impact things like investors or something like, look, and you're not going to get that from every journalist, and I'm not saying that to hype myself up. I should probably print it, but I don't operate on being a jerk and doing things that are harmful.
Yeah, Marie has thoughts on this.
Yeah. So back on the few roles, and I'll share the deck so you guys can look at those roles, do's and don'ts of media relations. It's common sense, right? If you wouldn't say something at a dinner table with strangers, why would you say it to the media? There is no such thing. And yeah, I mean, exactly. You guys, there's no such thing as off the record, right? So if you go on off a tangent and say something you shouldn't have, well, stop yourself before you do so. And that's the only media training you really need. It's just like think of what is acceptable to say. And if you're going to point finger at someone, say something is disrupting. If you want to have a very strong divisive opinion on something, it's completely fine. And especially as a startup founder, you should be trying to disrupt your industry. You should have things to say without having to be defamatory or pointing fingers at others. You can literally just use the research you've done, use the user interview you've done, and use that as a background of your media relations, as opposed to go off and say things you regret.
I feel like we've had a lot to say on this point, and I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the myths around journalism, and particularly startup and tech journalism. Can we talk about some of the narratives that are out there that you would want to dispel? Maybe Elle first.
That doing PR is expensive. I think there's definitely cheap options. There's great PR freelancers. Marie's doing an amazing job with her startup. There's freelancers out there. There's boutique agencies. So there's always a cost-effective option if that's something that you want to consider. Also, I think something that we haven't discussed yet is that the evolution of media, the social media, LinkedIn, newsletters, particularly VC newsletters, they provide an amazing channel to get your messaging out there. So yes, the AFR is amazing, it's brilliant, and the Oz, SMH, all great stuff. There's a time and a place for coverage in those publications, but also consider other avenues. Think of your own website blog. Blogs are brilliant. You have control of the narrative. You can share it how you want. I would definitely consider that. Also, the timing of media and doing media activity. It's, you don't have to be a well-established company. You don't have to be big. If you've got an amazing kind of founder story, you're, one-man band, you're creating something that's really disruptive, then yes, there will be, publications. There's great startup publications, So definitely, don't think you're not big enough, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, amazing. That's great advice. Just start. Yeah. Maybe I'll go to Marie first. Do you have anything to add to that? And then I'll ask the journalist.
I thought I had two more people to think of my answer. I think the one I really want to break this myth that you need to be a scale-up or have raised to get in the media. I think, you should be speaking to investors before you need to raise as a founder, otherwise you won't raise in time. You should get on journalist radar as soon as especially if you're an expert in your field or you're disrupting an industry. You should introduce yourself just an email intro. You will never hear back from journalists on an email intro, but they might know that you're an expert on this very topic, and they might call you next time they need someone to speak on that topic. So don't wait until you need media coverage to intro yourself to the journalists in your field. Start early, and start in a way that is more relation-based as opposed to a kind of boring advertising press release.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say no matter how new your business is, like don't be afraid to be cringe. And by that I mean like you have to, right? You want to be marketing yourself and getting yourself out there and telling your story. So do that. We certainly do it, putting ourselves out there. The other big myth that I would say, and you certainly see it from younger businesses, and it makes sense, right? Because you haven't been around the block necessarily, especially if you're a new founder, is that unfortunately for you, people like Simon and myself actually aren't there to do your PR. So you can't always guarantee that it's going to be a 100% positive story, or even if it's not negative, it could just be that maybe there was a really specific story that you wanted to tell, a specific angle. It's not our job to do that. It's our job to find what the story is for our audience. We serve our audience. Yes, we love the startup community, absolutely, but we also need to be unbiased and find the actual story there for our readers.
100%.
And that's the thing. Our job is to create an audience. Our job as editors and our bosses are all expecting us to deliver an audience. There's a relationship for us so that we can then sell advertising, hopefully, which pays for journalism. It's an old business model that's seriously disrupted, but it's still fundamentally what we do. So in our lizard brain, all the time, we are looking for what's the one that everyone's going to go, oh my gosh, I've got to read that. Now, the Daily Mail is the supreme example of how they do that. Crazy headlines that are 20 words long, almost a paragraph with capital letters, and half the time stolen. So they're kind of like the generative AI before it became generative AI. No dig at you there. But the point of that is we are looking for something that is going to bring eyeballs that people want to read. So understand our motivations and our customers, and then we have this strange customer relationship at the same time. We're doing business. This is a B2B transaction that we're about to have in telling your story. And so, again, think about what my motivations are going to be. I've got a little bit of swag on today. Does anyone know if One Lens is still around? I haven't heard from them for ages. But it's those relationships that you want to build with journalists that are really important too. Take a little bit of time. Have a soft one. Don't immediately walk into the room and start selling my company, I want a story, please. Just say, hi, here's what we're doing, thought you might be interested. And again, we'll keep you in mind and we'll have a list of contacts so that Tegan might do an amazing story about 10 companies for World Environment Day. And it might be your business, or, maybe it's sort of FinTech month. And so all of those little touch points along the way are an important part of that relationship as well.
Yeah. That's really... Oh, sorry. Okay.
Also, if you're a female founder, International Women's Day isn't the only day that you need to pitch your story.
Oh, dear God. Oh, my God.
Please, 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 please get your story out all those other days, because they are, they're front of mind for publications at the moment. So, be brave. And please don't wait to that one day. You need to get those stories out every day.
For the love of Christ.
It's like going to the fish market on Good Friday. Just don't do it.
Also, I would also say, men as well, if you are a founder or you're running a business as well, don't just roll out the one woman that you have around International Women's Day. We see it. No, and I get it, it's hilarious, but also it's hilarious because it is aggressively true. We found one, and it happens all the time, every year. Yeah, great. And there is no quicker way for me to probably never answer your emails or calls again than if I see that level of crap. I hate it, especially at Smart Company. I know that you do exactly the same thing, is that I'm very much about normalization. So we want to be seeing diverse founders and businesses all year round. I don't like to even really make a big deal out of it. I just like to normalize through simply existing on site.
Yeah, it would be awesome if we could stop talking about female founders as female founders and
It'd be
just
great.
talk about founders.
Maybe just founders. That might be cool. Hey,
I did stop doing that.
Yeah.
I think someone called me on it and I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Good job. So, very, very quickly.
I'm going to add one more thing too. We sell gossip for a living, right? That's what we do. So the other thing you need to know is we gossip. with each other as well. So we compare notes and we kind of figure out, we're always trying to get the feel for the people we're dealing with. And we know the industry can have some people who probably should be in Gold Coast property development, but instead they're in startups. And, so we're trying to get that measure. And yes, while think about it like a game of footy. We kind of, bash each other up on the field on a daily basis, but then we sort of stop, shake hands and go for a beer and compare war stories. God, I said war stories, but yeah, we compare sort of sports stories about what we do.
Amazing. So very, very quickly, I'm going to do like one more sort of double question and then we'll go to the audience. Very quick, 30-second do's and don'ts. What are the things you want to see in a pitch or a press release, whether as a PR or as a journalist? What do you absolutely hate?
Okay, the do's with pitches. Here's 3 bullets, okay. Research the journalist you're sending it to. Number 1 priority. Is it a topic that they're actually going to talk about and write about? And make sure you address them with their first name and correctly spell it.
F name is funny though. Like I will say, if we get a dear F name, that's pretty good.
Also, please give a description of your company in that pitch. So it needs to be just like 1 or 2 lines about essentially what do you do. And then you need really, really important, advice would be to make sure you know what is the crux of that interview that you're pitching yourself for. What's the important component to it? Why should they care? Okay, that's the important test. Why should somebody care? Why is it important? Is it unique? Is it different? That's what you should be writing in that pitch. And then make sure it's timely, that you may be something happening in the news already, and you're going to pitch it at that point in time. It's not something that happened a week ago. You didn't fundraise and you did that like 6 months ago. I've had that happen a few times. Founders reach out, say that they've done a raise, but it was like there was somebody a year ago. So make sure it's really timely. You've got a new appointment of somebody that's really quite senior. Make sure it's timely. And then also attaching pictures and videos. I always get new headshots of either the founder or the management team. And landscape. Okay, any other tips here for the pictures?
Oh, don't
PDF?
Don't send me a picture of a picture, which I have seen before. That will not look good on site.
So there are really affordable photographers out there. Come to me if you need a recommendation, who will happily either come to your house, go to a shared working spot outside, and just get some new headshots. A couple of $100, so you can attach it to your pitch. That will just drive eyeballs as well.
Great photos are always good. And for us as a digital publication, it has to be a photo. In old print newspapers, we could have a 1/4-page story without a picture in it on the overall page. But every story we publish has to have an image of some sort to work. And seriously, if you're putting the effort into your Tinder photos, unless you're married and trying to be obscure in them, they could work, but just make them, please, landscape, because that's how we work. Great if you can afford a photographer, but seriously, just get a good one. I asked for some guys the other day who, it was a terrible photo, and I said, look, just go and do this, and maybe put your product in there as well, because it's a physical product, and that will work for the story and help tell that story. I haven't told the story yet because I'm still waiting for the decent photo.
For me, it's going to sound so aggressively boring, but please get the boring stuff right. So like the photos, even just how your pitch is formatted. If it's a wall of text, I'm neurospicy. I can't read that. And I don't want to have to dig to find the relevant information. I don't think anyone does. So being able to be really succinct and to the point is really useful. Also, I would say, and look, I know it can be difficult, but especially if it is a timely story, and because we know that as journalists we're very time poor, if you have said in there, our founder or someone is available for comment, please actually make them available for comment. Like, we actually might need to talk to them quite quickly. I know that sounds unfair. Sometimes our deadlines are very short and we try to give as much time as possible, but make them available. And I would also say too, if you can give things under embargo as far in advance as possible, like if it is an embargo, that helps us a lot. So we actually have time to write the story and get it out on time.
So embargo means you put it at the start of your email and then in your press release, and so the journalist will wait until the embargo date to publish a story. Versus exclusive is you only give the story to the one journalist, just if the lingo is not clear for everyone.
And so for those exclusives, it's T Jones at Smart Company.
I thought you had the secret account for all of those. The other thing I was going back to the basics thing. My name is, I am from, I can't tell you how many pictures I get where, wait, what, are you even Australian? And it can take me 3 minutes of trawling through everything, maybe going to the website. And it's amazing how many websites just don't exist anywhere but online in terms of the company. I am from Australia, from Sydney, from wherever. And, I launched this company and blah, blah, blah. We do this. So I kind of immediately get a sense of who you are, where you're coming from, why we're going to have this conversation, and I will then dig deeper, and then you can kind of get to pitch bit. But it's amazing how many times we call it bury the lead in journalism, which is where the important part is somewhere down here rather than at the front. Just getting to the basics of who you are and why you're here are really important. It's the elevator pitch thing.
I would also just say that a lot of the time, again, we're very used to it, that if you do have a big exclusive, like your $100 million raise or something like that, you probably do have it under embargo with a bigger publication. That's fine. Just don't lie to us about it. Like, if we ask if everyone has the same embargo time, it's fine. We're grown-ups. Just tell us.
Yeah. And going back to the Daily Mail, this is what I say to PRs. It's like, if the Daily Mail can rip off a story you've worked on for 3 months in 15 minutes and have it up, I don't need the PR to send me the media release. I can read the story and do what's known as a write around and have it up hours before the PR gets to me. And at that stage, the narrative has been lost. So if you have a message or a quote or whatever that you really wanted in there, I just ignore it at that stage because I've moved on to the next story. And that's a little bit of an understanding of the competitive landscape that we work in, because the other part about stories, if you want to get broad coverage, and I understand why everyone wants to be in the Fin or the Age or the Herald or the Oz, because that is a really big validation. You've made it, It's why you keep the front covers. It's really important to get in a national broadsheet or tabloid as they are now, to be able to show your investors, your customers. It validates who you are and what you're doing. We're still interested and keen, but stories have a shelf life in the digital world, a little bit like uranium. And sort of within 24 hours, or, let's say medical isotopes, which, have a 24-hour shelf life. A couple of days later, it's like, nah. And for me, because, the post has gone on LinkedIn and there's no flywheel for us as digital publications to get further out. I'll go there on the same day, happy to sort of follow in the footsteps, and I want you guys to succeed and I want to tell your story as well. But if you come a couple of days later, it's like that train has left the station, and if I stop and do you there, then the next person coming along is probably going to miss out because I've only got so much bandwidth in the storytelling. So we want to work with founders in a smaller publication. But I think the thing that I struggle with for a long time, because we are competitive, just as you guys are, we have a very much a startup hustle mentality, as we sort of hate being blindsided. And that's probably the one thing I would say about what we do. So that's why, I get the bigger publications. I've worked for them. I've written for the Oz. I've written for all of these titles. But now I love fighting in the small space because I just think it's a bit more fun and more interesting.
Yeah. There's also, to add to that, there's like always something you can add to the narrative. So like, yes, the raise announcement might have been yesterday, but like, do you have some advice to share? Do you have some how I did it? Is there something else that you can like build on the story, not just be like, I'm going to ask you to write the same article that they wrote in the Oz yesterday. So I think we're running close to time. So
I think we've got the space for a tiny bit longer. I don't know if you guys can stay a tiny bit longer as well, if there's any question in the audience. Yes, please.
Yes, young man, how can we help you build your business?
A lot of the time, so
that work? There's like a really common question from early stage companies. They might not actually have your email address. I know Tegan plugged it just there, right?
And they haven't had.
This is an answer, honestly, you know. It's how many of the contact us forms actually get to you guys from the website?
It goes to our news inbox for Smart Company, which we do keep an eye on. Probably
How many unread emails are in that inbox?
that one's pretty good because my editor Eloise is actually not a chaos gremlin like I am, so no, that's pretty good. But directly to our emails is usually a bit better, I would say. Like if it's actually going to me, else that way it doesn't go to my colleague David.
Absolutely come to me, startupdaily@pinstripemedia.com.au, or Simon, if you can't remember that bit, at pinstripemedia.com.au. And Martin, I do want to congratulate you on getting caught with the Kardashian in the Ivy penthouse, because the coverage you got off the back of that really launched your business big time. Just one tip for how you get the media's attention. But no, we do see them all. But one question to answer is, I get about 400 emails a day. Yeah. Seriously. Tegan's the same. That's why there are 40,000 unread ones in there. Yeah, but when I saw that, I went back and checked, and I only know because I'd thrown out about 20,000 over Christmas that I got it down to about the same as her. And then I thought, stuff it, I'm going to beat her, and so I got mine under 40,000. But it was back over 40,000 the other day, and it's about 39.8 at the moment unread emails.
Any more questions?
I waited for the mic. This is more just to add to all of the stuff that you have said. So just so I introduce myself, I've worked for BBC News as a TV reporter and a journalist, and I've output TV news programmes, so slightly different to what you guys are doing. But just to reinforce the availability point that you made, it's, when I'm planning a programme, or when I've gone through and planned a programme, we had a situation in London where there was a biotech company that developed some AI to work to enhance kind of prosthetic limbs. And they'd fired it through to the inbox, and we'd seen it, and it'd come at the same point as there was some news release about the number of investments in London in startups. That was our hook, our peg. We wanted to use this company. We reached out to them. We need someone, TV is a pictures medium. We want to see, we want to hear from the person who's using it. The PR came back, we can't get anyone until next week. So that availability thing is crucial. If you send something out, just being available to, especially TV, radio is probably the same, is to be able to respond immediately and have availability.
Yeah, so that's a really, really important point. And I think you normally have an idea of when you're going to put that media release out. So, if we are going to get that media release out in a week's time, we've got a date in mind. That founder will have blocked out 3 hours on that day for potential interviews. So just make sure you've blocked out some time, whoever that spokesperson is, ahead of time, so that you're not scrambling to find something, just as this gentleman said, is very annoying for journalists.
There is a certain company where I used to get the pictures, and every time I wanted to talk to this person, they were travelling. I don't bother cothering them anymore, and I generally, when they send me a pitch, this particular PR company, I just ask them where he's travelling to at the moment.
It's
Down the back.
Oh yeah, one more question. I think we got time for one more question.
How can we find something unique and something that has been existing for a few hundred years? To give a bit of background, my business, we help physical product brands to design, develop, and manufacture products, and we own factories. So this kind of business in industry is not new, but I'm just thinking, how can we find new perspective, unique points to communicate to our audience that can still bring a wow factor to them?
We're going to give you that one. Yeah.
All right, I love these questions because that's one of the main problems we're solving with Newsary. By the way, I'm going to do shameless plug because we're pre-revenue bootstrap and we're freemium, so we're not making any money from it. We've got a free media kit that allows you to have all your photos and all the information that you need for a journalist, and that's a free thing, and that will really help your PR, so do it, please. Sorry. Then to your questions, finding your story is one of the hardest things you can do. If you're a successful business and you have, or just if you're interested to invest in your PR, ask a PR professionals how you can find your story, definitely. If you want to do it yourself, look at what is newsworthy into what you're doing, what is unique about your approach. Try and find maybe an investor, somebody famous to vouch for you or vouch for your customers, or just look at what's happening in the news and try and see if you can share an opinion or something that stands out from, that is paradigm shifting. Something that just stands out from what everybody else is doing. And those would be story angles I would probably look at for you.
Cool. One question for the journalists. What's your favourite startup story that you guys have worked on?
You know what? Funnily enough, so I have a weekly AI column called Neural Notes, and what I love about that is I get to tell very early stage stories. So besides the startup stories, which are probably not the most favourable, where I've caught people doing bad things, I actually think the one, and it's not even just a shameless plug, I think the one that I've got coming out tomorrow is about a startup that only started last year. It's just come in second place in the inaugural AI sprint, and basically their whole business model is around helping families navigating the NDIS, so something that's really important. Stories like that where I can see that it's going to make huge change in the world are my favourite kinds of stories, so I love to tell them.
I hope you've seen the post from Summer's husband where he's throwing the kids up in the air while watching the pictures the other day. Add that, because I love that, and I saw, I won't try and scoop you at this point in time, as tempted as I am. Yeah. Exactly. Where do we go? What was that was my publish on my behalf. What was the question again? I just got completely distracted.
Just looking for the favourite story that you've worked on.
Favourite story, that's right, yes.
world.
That's why I started rolling through the Teledex and forgot. Kindship is a wonderful story, and so I do urge you to read that tomorrow.
His favourite stories are mine.
Yeah, you are. Tegan is a great writer, a great journalist, and I am happy to be scooped and beaten by her because I love seeing her succeed. It's that simple. But for me, it is those little unknown ones. I mean, I love working with Usman at Catalyzer, which is for micropreneurs. I love giving voice to people who wouldn't otherwise be heard. And now, to put that in perspective, I write about 1,000 stories a year, or I publish about 1,000 stories a year. I probably write 600 to 700 of those. So I am moving at speed. I wish I could dive deeper. Occasionally, when I've really got the shits, I bash out an opinion piece and spend half a day on that, and I feel like that's a real luxury. Otherwise, I am probably giving myself an hour and a half maximum to get a story done. Now, that is where I work with PRs, so they can bring a lot of value to the table. It's really important. But I also work with you guys too. So I do have a series of questionnaires that I have and I send just as an explainer so that you can walk through your story and then I can work from there. And that's the way I do it efficiently. So those things, but the stories I love are the small ones, and I go back to that idea of the first time someone is heard. I think that is a really good thing. And then the other part that I actually get joy out of is the subsequent feedback where you've had some success off the back of that. Maybe you've made connections or a customer has come out of this or whatever. Those moments for me make me feel good about what I do for a living because, you know, I've done the years covering politics and business and disasters and all sorts of stuff. And yes, you can sort of stand up and get awards for sort of pointing out the assholes in the room, but I actually get more joy nowadays out of sort of celebrating great people.
I will say though, like pointing out the assholes in the room when it also then benefits the community. So I don't know if anyone read my stories about boosting female founders. Like that was a lot of fun. So you know, I think there's room for both. Thank you.
I think we've literally got one last question. Yeah.
Is out of hundreds of thousands of emails that you're receiving, what's that one thing that will make you open that email on spot or on the same day?
Yeah, look, everyone is working on different angles. Again, just keep it basic. You know, Australian startup. If you put that Australian startup news, just, you know, you're halfway there. I know to open that email.
Exclusive.
No. So I don't even...
Only if it actually is exclusive.
Let's go back to the exclusive thing. All I've said is I kind of feel like it's a little bit like the store gift, you know. you can have people sort of running from the back a little bit later. I kind of generally want a bit like a pool 50-metre race. Everyone jumps at the same time and the fastest person gets there. That was a skill that Tegan and I worked on early on, knowing that getting first to publish in digital is really important and you can do it quickly.
I would also say, though, what I've learned, especially working for a smaller publication, is you don't necessarily have to have the first story, but you can have the best story. And so getting that out sometimes, I think just having simple, grabbable headline, like, subject line, in your emails is great, relevant to that journalist. So it gets back to what you guys were saying about, like, if you're researching your journalist and you know what we are covering, that's probably going to get our attention.
Yeah, don't type something like a pitch, or because the other thing is that the gods of Google sort of often grab things and throw it randomly into the spam box, and we have to remember to go and check. And there are embarrassing times when you find it a week later, and it's nothing that you've done wrong or I've done wrong. It's just tech has decided they hate you on a particular day.
And I think putting something like, if you can say what the story is in 3 or 4 words, that helps as well. It's like, Australian startup does a thing.
Yeah.
Then we sort of know what the gist is.
Yeah. Do a thing.
Do a thing.
I'll let Martin close the event. I just wanted to thank our sponsor who helped us brought some food on your table today, as much as some fruit for thoughts. Thank you, Alan Jones from M8 Ventures and Pitch Club, who's also helped me go through my fear of public speaking. Still a bit there, but way better. So.
Let's give Maria a round of applause.
So now I feel like I'm becoming full red, but thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time today. And our speakers as well. I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your thoughts to founders to help them earn the attention they need.
And we'll hang around, so come and bail us up if you've got any more questions.
Thank you very much, guys. And thanks again, Alan, for the support. That is the Lunch and Learn here, and the food that you have is from Alan. So he worked very hard making all of that. No. Thank you so much to our panelists. Tegan and Simon are the good guys. I know that there's a couple of nice, spicy stories that are out there. They're the good guys. Like, I've said a couple of things in stories that I shouldn't have said, and I've gone back and said, hey, can you take that out? And they have. So, they're here for us, but they're there for the audience as well. But I'd like to say that they're the good guys in the media. So thank you again. Enjoy lunch and network around. I'd like to just mention as well, from a Fishburners aspect, we really pride ourselves on being the most inclusive startup community. We have a bunch of free events that are coming up over the next month. We have about 10 events starting from tomorrow, where we have a screening of Show Her the Money, which is a cinematic experience of 10 female founders trying to raise capital and grow their business. So that's an exclusive premiere here in Sydney starting tomorrow night, and we have 10 more events coming out over the next month. So look on our website, reach out to any of the team if you have any questions. We're here to help you as well. So thank you very much.